get insights from executive firm founders. We'll dive into their story, how they got started, their challenges, opportunities, and how they're shaping their business for the future. For those of you joining this podcast, I'm Amisha Shumankar, founder of Vectra Growth Partners, and we specialize in helping executive firms scale their revenue in 12 months. And today I have a lovely guest who is Masuma McGarrigle, founder and CEO of Rivet Recruiting. Masuma, hi. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me today, Amisha. Glad to be here.
Yeah, awesome. How are you today?
I am great. It is early December in the holiday spirit, doing whatever the hell I can just to focus and get through these next few weeks.
I know, right? Okay, so Masuma, for our audience, do you mind doing a brief introduction?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm the founder at Rivet Recruiting, and we help early stage B2B SaaS companies build out their go-to-market and leadership teams. So my role is kind of a blend of recruiter, operator. I'm like a therapist and air traffic controller to the founders. And I spend a lot of time talking directly with CEOs and founders about what they're trying to build, what's breaking, what they wish their first sales hire or first revenue leader did, and just sort of translate that into an actual hiring or talent roadmap, as opposed to just filling a job.
I love that. I love that. So when did the idea for Rivet really crystallize for you? And what specific gap in how early stage companies and tech SaaS and all that, how were they hiring initially and what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into the tech industry as a whole perhaps about maybe 7 years ago, really. I started to build out a client base when I was working at a larger recruiting agency based in New York City. And it just made sense to go out and do it on my own because, as you know, when you work in an agency, you bring home a very minimal portion of the profits as opposed to the revenue you're actually bringing in. So my business partner, Dan, and I went out on our own a couple years back, started up Rivet, and we chose tech and SaaS as our niche because it is, as you know, a very, very fast-growing industry. But more importantly, when I looked at the staffing industry as a whole, you look at agencies that focus on admin recruiting, operations recruiting, and listen, I did all of that early on in my career and it never really challenged me. But when you're recruiting for companies in blockchain and AI and machine learning, you were forced to work and to learn at a different level than I ever was staffing for those other industries, which is why we chose this to be our niche. And right now, a lot of what we're doing is working with founders and early operators, typically when their company is even still in idea mode before they even have funding, and really supporting them and really building out that roadmap to figure out who they're gonna need to get to where the hell they wanna go.
Okay, so the process I think starts earlier than when they realize that you know what, we need to have a controller in place and you kind of like guide and coach them like, you know what, it's maybe 6 to 12 months in advance, like this position you may need to fill wherever you're taking your company. Is that kind of right? You kind of educate them on that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So when you look at your best search outcomes, let's say over the last couple of years, what does great hiring actually look like in practice for the companies you work with?
Number one is responsiveness. I'm sure, Amisha, you hear, and there are horror stories all over Reddit about candidates feeling like they're getting ghosted after being dragged through the mud, 5 rounds of interviews, presentation deck, and then they hear absolutely nothing. I think a really strong hiring process or hiring outcome consists of extremely responsive parties from the candidate side, the recruiter side, and the founder or CEO or hiring manager side. You have to be respectful of people's time and be responsive. If they're not the right fit, tell them. I think providing people with an update is an update. I think another thing that results in very successful outcomes in hiring is transparency. The worst thing that can happen is you take a candidate through 4 rounds of interviews, you have them complete a case study, and then you go on to provide them with an offer that is $50,000 below what they very clearly told you is what they're targeting. Obviously, there's always room for negotiation, but when you're going in with comps that low, it's almost insulting and a big turnoff for candidates. So in my opinion, transparency and over communication are two very, very critical points when it comes to successful hiring outcomes.
Okay, you mentioned case study where, a candidate is supposed to go through, and I've seen these horror stories all over LinkedIn and Reddit, as you said. Sometimes they go through more than like 10 rounds of interviewing, which is, I don't know if that's a new norm or if that's a new trend we're seeing. But in addition to that, they have to do some, maybe share or do some case study work, or is that typically paid? What is that? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it is not typically paid, at least in the startup ecosystem, it isn't. The reason founders and CEOs ask for case studies is, of course, hiring is always a risk. When you're going into a startup super early that maybe doesn't have all of the infrastructure and systems built out, people can talk the talk all they want in interviews, but you really want to assess if they can walk the walk, and that's where the case study comes in. I will find these case studies, these presentation decks, and these analytical assessments are becoming more and more common and something candidates are being accustomed to. But I will say that they don't always happen early on in the process. Case studies typically happen when you're later stage and you've been bought in with a few stakeholders in the company. So I find that the case or assessment happens by round 3 or round 4, where there's some semblance of mutual alignment, where candidates are willing to invest the time and effort that it takes to put out a really successful case.
Okay, so it is the norm that you're seeing.
It is the norm, and they are not typically paid, no.
Okay, and are they expected to do a project before they get in, or like, hey, we want to test? Is there a trial period, or is it a project that they come on board before, they accept the position?
Rarely. I've seen that with a few seed stage founders I've worked with that maybe sometimes don't have all the capital to take the risk and bring on someone immediately on salary. But often once you've successfully completed a case, and there's never one right answer with a case, it's usually just understanding how you defend logic, how you present ideas, how you communicate when you're in a group think setting. If that case or assessment goes pretty well or satisfactory, we typically go straight to an offer and they become a direct hire, full-time salaried employee with the company.
Awesome. And what are the roles that you hire for, Masuma, typically?
Typically, it's a very wide range. We do anything that falls under the revenue umbrella and go-to-market umbrella. So that could be, your founding sales development rep or account executive who is selling new logo to customers, all the way up to your VP of marketing, your CFO or CRO, up to your SVP of sales. Anything revenue generating falls within Rivet's purview. What we don't do is engineering, C# developers. I wish we did. I'd be a lot richer if we did, but it's not an area of focus for us today.
Okay, very good. And what are some of the biggest challenges your clients typically face when they first come to you, and how do those challenges impact their overall business goals?
Question. I will say a primary challenge for them is really figuring out what the hell they're going to need. When you're working with an early stage startup that maybe doesn't have all the Bibles built out, all the processes built out, I'll have a founder come to me and say, hey, I need a head of customer experience for my direct-to-consumer brand because we have a tech-enabled platform and I need someone to own the D2C side. But then in taking interviews and talent mapping and helping them understand what type of talent exists on the market, a month later, after running 10 to 11 solid interviews, that founder could learn, hey, what I really need is a strategy and ops person or a chief of staff person, because priorities, product roadmaps, and buyer ecosystems and journeys change. So a primary challenge is founders thinking they want one thing and later learning they want something else. But that's where the beauty of working with a firm like Rivet really comes in, because we're very malleable and flexible when it comes to that approach, because things change at startups and we want to move and evolve with you.
Yeah. And I'd love to, and this is a perfect tail-end question coming up for you, is how are you guys different from your competitors? Like, what's the one thing that you bring that your competitors don't?
That's a great question. I think the first one is extremely human and custom outreach. There is so much AI hiring noise, and Amisha, I'm not sure if you've heard it, but I hear from so many candidates that they've just had poor experiences, as a lot of recruiting firms are using AI bots or agentic AI workflows to conduct outreach and schedule interviews. And honestly, it doesn't leave the best taste in a candidate's mouth, and we've always been human first and very authentic in our approach. So that's one thing that I would say really sets us apart. But two, we are definitely a quality-driven firm over headcount. I always tell founders, if you're looking for 17 resumes by Friday, I would recommend you go with another partner. This is not what we do, and this is not how we work. We really focus on finding that quality candidate that's going to work and you're going to retain over the long term, as opposed to bringing in 10 bodies and only 2 of them last 3 months down the line.
Yeah. No, that's great. And speaking of AI, I've heard I was actually speaking with a founder yesterday, and he said he was echoing the same sentiments. Like, you cannot have AI bots and avatars conduct video interviews or phone interviews. That's where you need the human touch. There is so much AI can do, and you still need the humanness of the whole thing. And recruitment is a very human kind of industry as well. We don't want to completely, get rid of the human element. Where is Masuma at Rivet, are you guys using AI to, for your operations, and where do you find like it's the best use of AI, and what would your recommendation be for other firms like yours?
Absolutely. So AI, of course, there are negative instances with really anything you implement, but I think AI has been a huge value add in a few ways. One, just in our follow-ups and our outreach, helping us devise better outreach methodologies and just cleaning up and polishing the way we reach out to candidates. It's been really great for messaging and outreach. Two, I think AI has been really, really beneficial for us in terms of the way we pitch our clients. I mean, if I'm selling a blockchain or a machine learning product or pitching that to a candidate, there's a lot of things I'm not an expert in, but AI has really helped me better understand my clients' value propositions and really helping me pitch that in a more human and easy to frame way today. And then three, I think AI has been super, super beneficial for us in meetings. In previous years, when I'm in a meeting with a new client, I was aggressively typing hours and hours and hours of notes, trying to get down everything they said, but now we rely on agentic AI tools to listen in on our calls and provide us with meeting summaries. But some other recruiting firms may say we sound behind the trends in terms of the way we're relying on AI, but I'll say that's what makes us different, and that's what really leads us to bring in those quality candidates, because we have that human first approach here.
Yeah. And do you use any AI outreach to kind of get candidates as well as connect with companies that you might want to do business with? How does that work for you? Is it more inbound, outbound?
I do not. The truth is I don't, because I get so much of that agentic AI outreach in my email. And I ignore it. I can tell that it is, a built-out sequence. I can tell that it isn't human. Just 3 days ago, I cold emailed the CRO of a Series B fintech company, and I wrote it like a real human being. And within about 4 minutes, he responded, scheduled time with his EA, and I had my very first intake meeting with him yesterday.
Fantastic.
And we were set to go live on a retainer. So, I really, really try to keep that human first approach, and that could change here at Rivet as we scale. But for now, we find that leveraging our real human, authentic language in the way that we do outbound has really worked for us.
Yeah, no, that's great. Fantastic. So Rivet seems very intentionally oriented toward founder-led growth stage companies where things are moving very fast, as you said, and roles can be kind of also pretty fluid. When you step into those environments, how are you thinking about defining role and success profile? So you're not just, like you said, replacing a job description, but actually hiring for where the company's going. How does that person, can they be fluid in different areas, or is it just a specialty? What does that look like?
I think it's so situational, Amisha, because founders today, a major shift I've been seeing in the industry is founders being a lot more intentional, especially with their first go-to-market hire. So where a year ago, I would have a founder tell me that they need a Swiss Army knife, but now they want people with real stage fit and real proof they can operate in a 0-to-1 situation. So I think it's definitely situational depending on the candidate, but I think it's what's most important for us to look for as recruiters or partners to our clients is making sure we are hiring for a few key things. One, candidates that have been in that 0-to-1 environment. I would never place a candidate out of OpenAI or Google or Box into a Series A or Series B startup where a lot of the infrastructure hasn't been built. Right. Two, we always focus on ego or lack of ego, and more focus on humility. When you're speaking to a candidate, that makes it very clear to you that XYZ wasn't my job, which is why I left, or I was doing someone else's job. And listen, I get it. You want to be paid for the work you're doing. But for us, we really, really focus on humility and people that are comfortable with environments of ambiguity. And that's where it's on us to really suss out who does and doesn't have the grit to be a true startup operator. And that's what we really train our internal team on.
Okay, fantastic. No, I love that. I think that makes total sense in today's landscape, in the tech landscape. What's your take on all these scary news that the tech landscape's changing? A lot of the big companies are shutting down. I mean, or there's massive layoffs. Does that affect the early growth stage companies that you work with, or are they just on a different trajectory altogether?
My advice to candidates that are on the market, specifically in tech, is to not always listen to the news because everything is so situational and everyone who reports what they report gives you their impression or their lens of what they're seeing. When I look at the startup industry as a whole, you will find that there have been far less layoffs at these earlier stage startups than these large post IPO unicorn companies that have hired in droves and fired in droves. They hire quick and fire quick. Where these smaller, earlier stage startup founders, they have to be more intentional with the way they hire. They have to be more scrappy with their budgets. They invest so much more time in the way that they hire their candidates so they can focus on retaining them. So I would say that the startup industry as a whole has definitely been on the uptick. I have so many clients specifically in our portfolio that have closed on Series A's this year. One of my more recent clients just closed on a $47 million Series A, which is 5 times larger than the average 2025 Series A.
Congratulations. That is
Oh,
awesome.
thank you. We've definitely seen a really strong uptick, and I think the market's in a good place. Founders are closing on funding, founders are hiring, and we are just as busy as we were in mid 2020 when money was falling from the sky.
Wonderful. I love it. So take me through that process, like from the first time that a company contacts you, founder contacts you, like, hey, we need to probably fill this role, and you give them the coaching and all of that thing. From that until they have that position filled, how long does that typically take?
Yeah, every time I meet a founder for the first time, they'll say, Masuma, how long do you think it'll take to fill this role? And I don't love to quote a timeline because it is so situational. The first thing I say is, we'll move as quickly as you move. It's important for you as the hiring manager to move at a timeline that is respectful of your candidate's time. But two, I think it's really, really important that we hold each other's hands throughout the process. So the type of relationship we have with our founders and CEOs means that I can text them at 7 p.m. and ask them for feedback after they've met a candidate. It means that they can call me at 8 a.m. on a Friday and say, crap, Masuma, I got double booked today. Can we move that meeting to XYZ time? So it's really, really critical that we have a very close friendship and relationship throughout the entire hiring journey to make sure we're aligned in terms of expectations and bringing in the right candidates. But on average, we'll run a kickoff call with our team to make sure all of our team members are able to hear directly from that founder what they're looking for and where they're looking to go. And every single time we interview a candidate, we make sure at least 2 members of our team connects with them, shares their impression of them, builds rapport with them. And these processes, of course, are situational, but on average, I would say time to hire can take anywhere from 30 to 90 days for individual contributor roles, and anywhere from 90 to 120 days for more senior and leadership level roles.
Okay. Okay. Love it. And what's working well for you right now? And what's been frustrating as a whole in the business?
So there's a lot that's going well right now, a lot. So we're working with founders that really value the operator style recruiting approach. So it just makes the process smoother. We've gotten really strong go-to-market searches, especially those very messy, sticky founding AE or first revenue leader roles that most recruiting firms hate because there's so much ambiguity. And the market has really picked up. So the quality of roles and companies we're working with is stronger than it's been in a while. Now, when we think about what's not going great, I would say the biggest pain point we're having is misalignment between expectations and reality. Because every founder says they want a unicorn who's closed $1 million in ARR at a Series C, but they're a pre-revenue startup with no process. So I think one last thing I would mention is candidate fatigue. A lot of candidates, as you know, Amisha, are getting spammed on LinkedIn by AI generated outreach. So cutting through that noise definitely takes a lot of work. And of course, early stage hiring is always going to have its surprises, runway changes, priorities shifting, goals moving, the product evolving, but that's just the nature of the beast. You got to learn to roll with it when you're in this space.
Yeah, no, I hear you. If I have to speak specific numbers, which metrics are you most focused on improving?
I think one, focused on expanding our ARR. So or not ARR, revenue as a whole. We have exceeded our revenue target for 2025, I think back in November, which was fantastic. But I think we could almost double that if we had a little bit more bandwidth on our team. So that is one challenge we're facing. We're a small but nimble team, and it's very challenging to bring on strong recruiters that understand the industry we work in. But two, I think another challenge is divvying up our focus on more executive searches versus individual contributor searches. Today, I would say 75% of what we do is more so individual contributor or super individual contributor, let's say manager, director level, and 25% of what we're doing is VP, C-suite, and above. And we really want to see that shift in the coin where we're focusing on more executive level searches and maybe a little bit less IC. And that, of course, Amisha, is only going to be solved when we're able to bring in more strong recruiters and provide better bandwidth for our portfolio.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the last time you and I spoke, you said that you guys have big goals to kind of like expand there and add more team, more recruiters and more operators to do that. Is that still accurate?
That is accurate. I still got a few interviews later today for candidates internally here at Rivet. And I think our primary challenging is finding someone that can operate in the ambiguity of such a small boutique environment. But two, hiring for startups is hard, Amisha. It is, and I've done the admin hiring for large finance companies like TD Bank and UBS. I've done the operations hiring for manufacturing and logistics, and hiring for SaaS is a different beast. You have to have EQ, IQ, and you have to have a level of confidence and almost a little bit of a baby ego to manage the candidates that work in this ecosystem. And that's been a difficult balance to find when we're trying to hire internally.
Yeah. So where have you seen the biggest results in terms of where you focused your energy this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one, it's really been in growing our portfolio. My partner and I, we haven't really outbounded too much. I would say 10% of our clients have come through cold outreach, and the other 90% have been founders referring us to other founders after having a positive experience with us. But over the last 3 to 6 months, my business partner and I have focused a little bit more of our efforts on outbounding, and it's something we're getting more comfortable with because everything's inbound till it's not, and you can't get too comfortable with that. So we've seen some pretty good return there, and I've actually got a new BD meeting at 1:00 today. Wish me luck from some cold outreach. So that's one thing that we're really, really excited about.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of your strategies for outbound is cold emailing, which you, Masuma, draft them yourself and you put in the care and the attention, which is really unheard of, and I love that. What else do you guys do for outbound?
Yeah, so in terms of outbound, I would say I go to a lot of industry events. The challenge, Amisha, and I'm sure a lot of recruiters would agree here, when you're a recruiter and you go to one of these industry events for professionals in tech or AI or emerging tech, people meet you and they think, what's in it for me? People typically look at you from that job seeker's lens, and I'm going hoping, of course, to always meet candidates, but it's always great to meet founders and CEOs and revenue leaders that could be prospective clients. And I usually find I go to these events and it just turns into candidates that are interested in looking for roles as opposed to prospective clients that actually have a need for hiring or have that decision-making power to bring in a new vendor. So that's where I'm going to have to sort of switch up my search a little bit in the way I'm outbounding or targeting these events. But that's what I would say is a little bit of a challenge in outbounding. But that's another area where we're starting to put a little bit more effort.
Okay, no, that sounds fantastic. So when you think about the next 6 to 12 months, is your bigger lever winning new client relationships or going deeper with the ones you already have?
I'd say it's going to be a 50-50 split, but the only way to go deeper with the relationships we already have is to bring on more recruiters. We're at a point where my partner and I are bringing in X amount of jobs, but we're a small team of around 5 people, and it's very difficult to be able to deliver on all of it with such a small and nimble team. The only way for us to expand and hypersaturate our existing clients is to be able to deliver on every single open role right now, and that's been a primary challenge for us. So number one goal is to expand and bring in 1 to 2 internal recruiters and headcount by Q1. And then goal number 2 in doing that would be to really focus on expanding our existing accounts. And the more you expand those, the more likely it is that those founders are going to refer us to other founders, because that's just the way the business works. Your name is all you have, and you build good rapport and a good reputation, and those referrals are going to come.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what part of your lead flow feels the most fragile right now? Is it getting enough at the top, getting people to respond, or getting them to a real conversation? Like, walk me through that.
Getting enough at the top is going to be a common issue for really anyone. We do get quite a few leads or referrals, again, from existing founders we know quite often. But of course, it would be fantastic if we were to be in a place where these founders were consistently coming inbound. And if someone anywhere can crack the code on that truly with actual leads that end up converting into new business revenue, I would love to meet that person.
I know, right? Won't we all? Masuma, what are your inbound efforts? I know you talked a lot about the outbounding. What are you doing for inbound?
Yeah, so when it comes to inbound, one, we always try to maintain candidate relationships. Many times, Amisha, I don't place every candidate I work with. They'll get to the third round, they'll decide they're not interested, or my client won't move forward. But we make it a point here at Rivet to become friends with our candidates. And when those candidates go on to work at other companies, they'll always remember you and come back to you and they say, hey, we're actually hiring sales reps. Hey, I'm bringing on a strategy and ops leader. Are you free for a meeting next week? And this is where a large chunk of our existing client base comes from. Developing strong relationships that evolve into friendships that then turn into actual client recruiter relationships.
I love it. And do you have a system or is it just more ad hoc?
Right now, it's a little bit more ad hoc. I wish we had a little bit more of a formal system, but I'm glad you raised that point. Maybe it's something I'll work on over Christmas break.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love that. Masuma, you kind of like touched on this already, but if you could solve one major challenge today, where would that take you for the next 6 to 12 months in your business? If you had a hypothetical magic wand to fix one thing.
I think our big challenge, and I'm echoing what I said about 14 times over, is finding a strong go-to-market recruiter within B2B SaaS. I have interviewed probably around 40 candidates in the last 90 days, and there's some people we liked, some people that I couldn't really feel the connection with, and some people we met that had the industry knowledge, but maybe not the urgency. And then others we've met that were solid recruiters, but solid recruiters that are in a good situation aren't jumping for the next situation because they're probably making a lot of money doing it. So just bringing on the right internal talent could really take our business to new heights and give my partner and I a little bit more bandwidth and breathing room to focus on growing our business, hunting for new clients, and building out better systems internally. So hiring internally is our biggest challenge, and that magic wand would be amazing in fixing that.
Yeah, no, love it. All right, I think we're almost towards the end. I want to ask you, what's one thing you could leave our audience, one key message, or one piece of advice in regards to growing their business and continue being successful?
I think my number one bit of advice to our audience in terms of growing their business would be to never get too comfortable. When you are running a business, we get so comfortable with running our own schedule, working remotely. Sometimes, I bet for you, Amisha, there are days you just don't leave the house. You have to put yourself out there to really build out those relationships. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. I teach at Drexel's School of Business, and that happened for me just by going to a random happy hour I was invited to. So despite how good and easy it is to stick behind that laptop in that dark corner of your office, get outside and meet people, because there's no way in hell you're going to grow your business without getting in front of customers.
I love that. Oh, awesome. Where can our audience find you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn under Masuma McGarrigle. You can visit our website at www.rivetrecruiting.com and send us a message under the Contact Us section. And I'd love to connect with you, whether you are scaling out your team or you're on the market for an opportunity or you have a friend of a cousin of a sister who's looking. I'd be happy to connect with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all your time today.
Thank you for having me, Amisha. Happy holidays.
Yeah, you too.